Welcome back to another episode on DIY Creators. I'm Glenn, and today we're going to be setting up the doghouse and also setting up landscaping around the doghouse. If you missed the first video on how the doghouse was made, be sure to check that one out and you'll see how we got to this point. This video is sponsored by Wrangler Riggs Workwear. At the end of the video, I'll be hosting a giveaway for some Riggs Workwear products, so stay tuned for that. I chose a location that was out of the way and didn't get a lot of sun. The fence blocked a good portion of the sun here, so this was a perfect spot for the doghouse. Landscaping is not my strong point. I actually like doing landscaping, but I haven't done a ton of it. Now, I had an idea on how I wanted to do this, but I did not have a complete plan, so there was a lot of thoughts and thinking on the fly while I was doing this project. After I measured off the area, I started ripping the grass up. And this area wasn't too hard to rip up because it doesn't get a ton of direct sunlight, and because the fence is creating a shadow on it pretty much most of the day, it kept this area pretty moist. So now I wanted to set the foundation, which I'm going to use a couple bricks that I picked up from the local hardware store, and I need to get these settled and level. The problem here is the ground is at a pitch, being that I'm so close to the property line for water runoff. So this part just made it a little challenging. It wasn't a huge problem, but it was very time consuming trying to get everything level. And now that all the blocks are set, I'm going to use a hand tamper to compact the ground. I add a weed barrier on top of the rocks with the hopes to keep in the moist down and the direct contact from the doghouse with the dirt itself. And at this point, I'm going to wheel the doghouse in and just muscle it over onto the blocks. Now, I did state it before that I didn't have a complete plan on where I was going with the landscape, but I decided I'm going to put the palm tree here and see what happens. Now, I could totally see myself moving all this in about a year or two because I haven't decided on my backyard landscape, so I didn't cut the whole entire bucket off the palm tree, I just removed the bottom. I wanted to see how the rocks would look up against the white on the doghouse. This was not the look I was going for, so I decided to remove more grass and start adding the landscape edging. Being that I started so late in the day, night creeped up on me pretty fast. So this is day 2, and here's where I left off from the night before. So now the first thing I want to do is start leveling the ground and getting that ready so I can start putting down all the other materials. Now, there's only so much you can do with a hand tamper, but at this point I'm going to hand tamper the ground just to compact the dirt as much as I could. So in this location here, I decided here's where I'm going to put the synthetic lawn, and I'm going to use some pebbles that I picked up from the store as well, and I'm going to use that for drainage under the synthetic lawn. Now, right when I was in this location, I decided that let's move on to another part of the project because I needed to see more of it come together before I can make a decision on that. So the plants I'm using here, they're called Yuca Plants. Now, the reason why I chose those, I had 2 reasons for that. One, I like the modern look, and also they're very durable and they can tolerate being dry. And these plants in particular, they can be used inside in your office or your home. And you may have seen these, but maybe not this small. They're much cheaper if you get them smaller versus if they're much grown up. So the number one goal here is simplicity. I want the design to look simple, but I also want it to look amazing. And when I'm doing my project, I always have a go-to move, and in this case I'm going to use rocks to make the landscaping stand out. I think it's simple, and I also think it adds a modern feel to it. Now I'm adding weed barrier, and in this case weed barrier is not going to keep all the weeds out. It's just going to minimize it. I'm sure there's commercial grade that works a lot better than the ones you can pick up at your local hardware store, but this is the one I picked up. So now that the rocks is added in this location here, I still have to put in the stepstone. So I don't want to go any further on this side, so I'm going to move my focus back to the other side where I was before. I'm starting to get a picture of what I'm looking for. So I'm compacting this area here because this is going to be like a sitting area. At least this is what I'm envisioning for the dog. This is where I'm going to put in the synthetic lawn. Now, I'm not going to cover how to install a synthetic lawn in this video because the way I'm choosing to install it here is not the way it's supposed to be installed. There's so many more steps being required for that. So I will cover that in a future video as a dedicated video. So I don't want to put a ton of effort into this area because I do have a dedicated location for the dog area in the future, and I don't want this to be in the way when I get ready to actually put in all the efforts to making that a permanent spot. Now, I could have butted the synthetic lawn all the way up to the fence, but I don't really like doing things that I think is predictable, so I added the rocks behind it, which I think make it stand out even more. So this grass is almost like carpet. It's pretty easy to work with. You just cut it from the bottom and it cuts really easy. When you purchase a synthetic grass, it comes like carpet. It's all rolled up. And that being said, the grass is leaning to one side. So adding the sand does a couple things. One, it weighs it down, and two, it also helps keeping the grass standing straight up. To install synthetic lawn the right way is very intense. There's a ton of work that's involved, but the end result is amazing, and there's nothing better than being able to walk outside without shoes on and not have to worry about bugs. But we'll cover that in a future video. I'm using a brush right now, and what the brush does, it basically helps the grass stand up and it works to sand down in between the grass. Now, to tie these stepstones in the design, I'm gonna add some paint to it. Now first I'm gonna use some sealer primer, and that should help the paint stick better. Now, after letting it sit for a while and it had time to dry, I'm gonna come back over it with 2 coats of gray paint. I believe a darker coat of gray paint would have looked better in the design. In this case, I'm using something that I had on hand. Now, you can play with the design as much as you like. I just happen to like the way the staggered look came out, so I stuck with that. Now, at this point, the last thing I have to do is just fill in the areas using the rocks. It's kind of hard to tell on video, but I have 2 different color rocks in here. One is a gray and one is a white. The gray actually doesn't stand out as much as I would like, but it's in here. And after all that hard work, it's time to water these plants and call this project done. So this is Diamond, and if I had to guess, I think she likes her new house. So Wrangler supplied the rigs workwear for both videos, the doghouse building video and also the landscaping video. When I received the workwear in the mail, not gonna lie, I was expecting to be sweating, especially because I live in Florida. So I was surprised to see how cool and dry I was during the process. From the shirt to the jacket and of course the pants. This product screamed comfort, durability, innovation, value, and on top of that, lifetime warranty. So for your chance to win a similar outfit, just let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment and include #WranglerRigs. The winner will be announced a week from today on Instagram at DIY Creators 2015.